Broadcasting live from Youngville, North Carolina and Ontario, Canada, this is Got Mead Live, a weekly show where Vicky Rowe and AJ Aramutz bring you the mead news, meadery info, and mead making discussions from all over, talking with mead makers, mead owners, industry mavens, and influencers. This is Got Mead Live, a weekly podcast about mead and the people who love it and where the mead world is going. And now here are your hosts, Got Mead owner Vicky Rowe and mead and wine maker AJ Aramutz.
And live from the den of the puppies of the apocalypse, Ryan's pad in Denver, the TARDIS in Florida, Melbourne down under, and the Bunny Pen in Ottawa, Canada, it's Got Mead Live. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're talking yeast with Ryan Carlson. So, the show link stuff. You can listen to us live on the Got Mead website, or if you're mobile or want to listen later on, check us out on iTunes, SoundCloud, or TuneIn Radio at tunein.com. You can search for Got Mead Live there. Replays back to the beginning of the show are available on gotmead.com, Spreaker.com, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. Just search for Got Mead Live. We now have a show player right on our Facebook page at facebook.com/gotmead. Come check that out too. And of course, you can find us at Facebook, facebook.com/gotmead, and facebook.com/groups/gotmead. We are on Twitter at gotmeadnow. If you can't call us, tweet us. Making Mead Back to Basics, and any questions, you can check the links on the gotmead.com forums. And if you want to call in live, we are reachable at 803-443-MEAD. And, we do this out of the goodness of our hearts and because we like to talk and make mead and talk about making mead and drink mead while talking about making mead. So, there are things behind the scenes that need to be supported, and you can help support the stuff behind the scenes by becoming a supporting patron member, $30 per year, and you get access to so much more on gotmead.com, as well as that satisfying feeling of helping us keep this program going. And so, what are we drinking tonight? Vicky, what have you got?
Well, I have a Mazer Cup find. It's an unidentified sweet vanilla blueberry mead that it's in a 375. It's got this gorgeous, super deep reddish blue color. I mean, it's the prettiest blueberry I've seen in a long time, and it's got all this blueberry nose and just a touch of vanilla in the nose, and then when you drink it, it's like big blueberry followed by just enough vanilla to kind of leaven out the sweetness of the blueberry, and it's just a really nice mead.
Nice.
I'm gonna badger the Mazer Cup people to see if I can possibly get them to tell me who makes this, and if it's a pro, I'm gonna go buy some.
Cool. Hamish, are you on?
Yeah, I've just finished a sample of my latest traditional that I've put together. It's just got down to about 10:20, and I've decided to cold crush it. And now I'm on to coffee because I'm meant to be driving up to see a client in a couple of hours, and Got Mead backs up safe drinking practices and drinking in moderation and not drinking while driving.
Absolutely. Ryan, what have you got?
Well, so I've got I don't know what you'd call it, a spiced fruit mel, so methamel that I made. I a lot of times pick certain either foods or different liquor styles and try to make something mead-wise that would satisfy people that like to drink that. My friends just love to drink cabs for dinner, and it's always frustrated me. They love my wines or my meads, and they want to drink it until it's time to sit down and eat. And then everybody goes for their cab. So I've tried about 4 or 5 different batches to make a cab substitute that everybody would, stop drinking their cabs for dinner. And they've all turned out good, but they still never have hit the mark that I'm looking for. So I'm drinking one of those tonight.
Cool. I have got a Golden Coast Mead California Oak that, remember I talked about doing a yeast test with Stephen from Kingston?
Yeah.
Anyway, he brought that as a gift. And so this is a California wildflower honey with fermented on American oak chips, and it's actually quite pleasant.
Sounds yummy.
All right, well, let's see. Come on, computer, you can do this. So, Ryan, we're going to be talking about yeast. What are you planning to cover today?
Well, so it's going to depend a little bit on how long it takes us to get through things. I don't want to directly direct the show based on a time frame, but I also know that I think we've had a tendency, according to people that have given us some feedback on the forum, that the show has always been too long. But in any case, I want to speak about yeast selections. How do I choose a yeast? What things do I need to be aware of? And maybe some things that would make that yeast not be a necessarily good choice. Then I want to go on to talk about pitch rates. There's a lot of confusion on how much yeast should I use. Then I want to move on to rehydration to teach everybody how to rehydrate correctly. This is really the first place that we can interject our own personal being into making mead, and it's quite frankly a place where too many people, especially new ones, kind of mess things up. And lots of times when we see people that have gotten on the web and say, oh my gosh, I'm having this or that problems, many times it goes back to getting the yeast off to a poor start to even start with. Right. And then if we get past that, we want to talk about the different phases of fermentation, in other words, the different phases that the yeast themselves go through, and talk about, maybe if we get this far, O2 additions, so that we can set up our yeast to have the best results they could possibly have. You know, as you guys already know, the yeast make the mead, right? And so we're kind of just like caretakers for the yeast, and if we do that right, we get tremendous benefits, and if we do that long, we have to wait for a while, and we may not ever get tremendous benefits from certain batches if we've screwed it up so well. So
yeah, you don't want to be abusing
starting
your
at the
yeast.
very beginning. I'm sorry?
You don't want to be abusing your yeast, it shows.
You're going to have to get your yeast beater t-shirt off now, guys. And so yeah, we're going to talk about how to treat our yeast nicely this evening so that they can go on and do what they do without having any problems. And ultimately then what happens for us is the ones who make the yeast, is the mead rather, is we get to drink it a lot sooner. You know, back just even a few years ago, people would make it and they'd have to wait for a year or more before it started to present well enough to be able to drink. And all of us have found now, using the most modern science, that we can literally taste good mead out of our fermenters before they've even cleared. And I think I once heard, actually I don't remember, one of the big dogs in the mead industry say that he won a competition with a mead that was 3 months old from pitch. And so people probably think that's people think that that's crazy, but it's really not. I'm here to vouch for that, and I know there's a lot of different ways to make meads, but the way that I make it will create these results, and so I want to share with you what I do and why I do it, especially for people that haven't had the opportunity to kind of land on their own system that works for them. So that's what we're going to do tonight, is talk about how to get our yeast off to a good start.
Yeah, I know people who have meddled with meads that are less than 45 days from pitch. So, you know, you treat your yeast well, and they reward you.
That's right. Yeah, well, I've done that. That one I took out the Mazer Cup with won its first gold medal only 3 months out.
There you go.
And then a year later, it took out the Mazer Cup as well. So it had some longevity on it as well, which surprised me.
Nice. Was that the mead that you beat me out and I took second place in?
Probably.
this past year?
Yeah, I only won 1 gold ever, so it's got to be that one.
But the look
congratulations.
on his face was priceless. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool. You know, after I came back to my seat,
and I practically gave up, and I went, oh, well, that's it for me. And they called me up first. I'm like, no way.
Well, Well, when I got back to my chair, one of my friends who owns a meadery here in the Front Range area, he came and he said, I feel kind of bad. And I said, well, why is that? And he says, well, I judged that particular flight. And he said everybody was pulling for your mead. He says it was a very good mead, but I encouraged everybody and eventually persuaded the vote to go to your mead, Hamish, because they said that it was, more complex than mine. And I can understand that. The mead that I, competed against with you, it was a nice mead, but I'll be honest, it wasn't that complex. And I really wasn't trying to shoot for a complex thing there. I was trying to highlight a certain few things. And I said, look, man, I said I wouldn't ever want to win something because somebody, felt a certain affinity towards me and they knew that it was my mead. I said, don't feel sorry. I would hate to win if anybody cheated, so it's all good. And congratulations to you again.
Cheers, man.
All right.
So,
I guess we're going to start with yeast selection then.
Yeah, I'd like to just speak to our listeners just for a second. Last week we talked about using oaks in our mead, and so if there's other people now that are listening to the show, I think we would like to always give an opportunity for the past show or even past shows, plural, to get on. And in other words, if you have questions from last week, we'd like to field those as well. So please feel free to contact us however you do, whichever platform or medium you use. And if you have questions about last week's show, it's not too late for that as well. So, I guess the first thing, and it's probably always difficult for people getting started, they don't know what yeast to use. And so we generally ask for a recipe, don't we? And then we try to follow along the recipe. That's all good and fine, but at some point, if you understand how to make mead, and you understand the science behind it, which over the next few weeks we'll get to the end of that, and hopefully then everybody will understand the working part of the science, it's not so much about the recipe anymore, because when you know how to do the science and how to make a mead, really the ingredients kind of answer themselves. And it's not so hard to figure out what ingredients you need. But it is a little bit confusing early on picking yeast. And so I can tell you this, there's lots of yeast manufacturers out there. And just because I'm not going to talk about them tonight, it doesn't mean anything other than I don't have any experience with these other things. I've really, for most of my mead making life, I've used Lalvin yeast, and here's why. They have a handbook called the Scots Laboratory 2016 handbook, and you can go in there and you can look at every yeast that they have, and it will tell you all kinds of information about that particular yeast. It's a dictionary, really. I call this the Bible. This is where I mostly taught myself how to make yeast. I mean, I haven't learned that, no way, but
You make yeast? Wow.
anyway, I learned a lot from the Scott Handbook. I started kind of reading Jack Keller's side, and then I jumped over and started learning from the Scott's Handbook side. And really, there's everything you could ever need to know about fermentation in this book, and I don't think enough people refer to it. And it's very informative, got all the information you could ever want about everything in there. I have used a few other yeasts that are not in the Lalvin catalog, but only sparsely, and I think then I jumped over and I've always had good success with their yeast. I really like that I can look up all the information about it, and you can't, as far as I know anyway. You can't look up all the information on other wine yeasts like you can here with the Lalvin website, the Scots Labs Handbook. So most of what we're going to talk about tonight, if not all, will be from that, and that's not to poo-poo any of the other yeast manufacturers. It's just I don't have very much information